Hey everyone, it's Jake Truitt here, your host. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast series, Cinema Time. About a week late for this episode, so I just wanted to get on here and do a quick update, real quick, and introduction. I apologize that this podcast came a week late. It was supposed to come last week, but my yearly allergies decided to kick in and say, hey, by the way, we know you have a podcast that you're supposed to be doing today, but guess what? You get to spend the weekend congested and with a headache and not feeling well. So, again, I genuinely apologize to everybody who listens to my podcast that there was not an episode last week. I actually just got over my allergies as of today, about 3 days ago, and my voice actually just came back a couple of days ago. I didn't necessarily lose my voice. It was just, I was very congested and I was sniffing a lot and I was coughing a lot, and I didn't feel like making a podcast and having you guys listen to me sniff and cough the whole time. That wouldn't have been fun. It would have been sniffle time instead of cinema time. So, without further ado, we're here now. I'm better. So let's dive into this week's episode. The movie of the week we are going to be talking about today is Coraline. I don't know if any of you have seen this movie. I'm sure most of you have. It came out back in the year 2009, so I would assume most people have seen it. But, fun fact, actually the book Coraline was first released back in the year 2003 by Neil Gaiman. And I actually just read the book recently. If you go to my other YouTube channel, The Hardy Bard, I actually posted an audiobook reading of me reading the whole story. It's not separate videos based on the chapters, it's just one whole book. So if you want to go check that out, I read the whole book on there. It was actually very interesting. It was a lot darker in a lot of areas than the movie. And fun fact I found out, if you've seen the movie, which, by the way, I've said this before in the past podcast, I'll say it again. In these podcasts, I will be saying things that happened in the movie, so you have been warned. Spoiler alert, spoiler warning. I know a lot of people don't warn you before they do this. I will even put it in the description of the video. There are spoiler warnings. So let's get back to what we were talking about and dive right back in. So, something that happened in the book that did not happen in the movie. I found out, if you've seen the movie, the character YB Lovat, who is the young boy that becomes Coraline's friend in the film, was not actually in the book. He was a character created for the movie, because if you read the book, it seems that Coraline is talking to herself most of the time. So when Tim Burton and Henry Selick came together and directed and made this movie, they knew that YB wasn't a character in the story, but they created him so that way Coraline had a friend and a companion, and it just didn't seem like she was talking to herself the whole time. As I said, there are also a lot more darker things in the story, or just the way things are done or said in the movie. And I noticed a lot of the events that happened in the movie compared to in the book. In the book, a lot of them happen out of order. So the movie itself, for those who are curious, it's called Coraline, like I said. It came out in 2009. It's, believe it or not, rated PG, but I personally think it should be rated PG-13. And I'm pretty sure I remember somewhere it saying PG-13 when I was watching it as a kid. It's about an hour and 40 minutes long. It's a horror/fantasy. It got really great reviews by Rotten Tomatoes. It's one of the best Tim Burton, Henry Selick movies ever made. Fun fact real quick about Tim Burton and Henry Selick. So, other movies that I will cover in the future, such as The Nightmare Before Christmas, which, giving you a hint now, that is going to be next week's movie. That is made and created by Tim Burton, but it's directed by Henry Selick. A lot of people think that those movies are directed by Tim Burton as well. He does have a sense of direction in them, but in those movies, it's just mainly created and written by him and directed by Henry Selick. Anyway, back to the film. So, in the film Coraline, the description is this. It says, while exploring her new home, a girl named Coraline, voiced by the very famous Dakota Fanning, discovers a secret door behind which lies an alternate world that closely mirrors her own, but in many ways is better. She rejoices in her discovery until the other mother, voiced by the famous Terry Hatcher, and the rest of her parallel family try to keep her there forever. Coraline must use all her resources and bravery to make it back to her own family and life. So essentially, yes, as it said there, she lives in this very dark, bland, boring world, very Tim Burton-esque looking, very bland and not so very colorful. And she meets a series of characters that are her neighbors. She meets the man upstairs known as Mr. Babinski. He runs a uh, circus of mice that he's planning on putting together. And then there's Miss Pink and Miss Forcible, who are two old ladies that live downstairs. They used to be trapeze performers back in their day when they were younger. And then there's YB Lova, of course, the young boy that Coraline meets. And then there's a strange black cat she meets that she has this sense the cat can talk, but the cat doesn't at first until she gets to the other world. And then he says that he's always been able to talk, which kind of throws her for a loop for a minute because she called him a big fat wuss puss earlier in the film, and knowing that he can talk, he repeats this later, insulting her as if he wouldn't know anything as a cat, and he says, "After all, I'm just a big fat wuss puss." And the cat is voiced by the very famous Keith David. He is a phenomenal actor, as are the rest of the people. As I said, in this cast, there's Dakota Fanning, Terry Hatcher, Keith David, Ian McShane, Don French, Jennifer Saunders, George Selick, John Hodgman, just a lot of big time actors. And Dakota Fanning was obviously a child when she made Coraline. Now, a lot of people have asked over the years if Coraline is a kids' movie, but I'm here to tell you that it is not necessarily a children's movie. I would say that if children are eager to watch it, parents should definitely be in the room with their kid, depending on how young their kid is. I remember watching it when I was younger and it freaking me out, like in a spooky sense. And even to this day, as an adult, it still sends an unsettling chill up and down my spine just because of the storyline itself. But a lot of people have asked if it's a kids' movie, and according to the most popular answer online, it would say some may be upset by the themes of the film that includes the ghosts of three eyeless and devoured children. You heard that right. So, it is a stop-motion animated 3D film. So, for those of you who don't know what stop-motion films are, they are clay animated three-dimensional films that are handmade by people, the sets, the puppets, aka the characters, and every movement you see in these movies. Say Coraline is walking down a pathway and she goes to raise her arm to pick a flower. Everybody who is, or the person I should say, who is controlling Coraline has to literally move every single movement from one foot in front of the other to the other, her hand moving up, picking the flower, coming back, moving down. So it's move, record, pause, move, record, pause, move, record, pause. They have to move every articulate little movement in this movie for everything that's happening, not just with the characters, but also with the environment around her that's changing. Now, as far as the three eyeless and devoured ghost children, later on in the film, Coraline, after she has visited the other world a couple of times, the other mother and father tell her that she could stay there forever if she wanted to, but there would be one tiny little thing they would need to do. And this is what I mean by spoiler warning. So if you've gotten this far and you want to keep listening, be my guest. But if you have not seen the movie yet, stop the podcast here, go see the movie, and then continue it later, because this is where the biggest plot twist of the story comes. Anyway, for those of you who have seen it, I will go ahead and continue. So, in order for Coraline to stay there forever, there's one tiny little thing they have to do, as her other mother would say, and they give her a little present. And as she looks inside the present, she notices that it is two black buttons, a needle, and a thread. And she starts off saying black is traditional, but if you prefer pink or yellow or chartreuse, you might make me jealous. So Coraline realizes in the moment, even though she's a child, what is going on. She's realizing that the other mother and father, in order for Coraline to stay there forever, have to sew buttons into her eyes. So Coraline immediately acts out on this and shoves the buttons forward and says, "No way, you're not sewing buttons into my eyes." And the other mother indicates that they need a yes if she wants to stay here. Well, and then the other father in this moment says, "So sharp you won't feel a thing," but before he can get his full sentence out, the other mother has an angry look on her face and kicks him under the table. So at this moment, you know something is not right about the other mother, of course. And then a little bit later, not much longer in the film, Coraline comes to ask the other father where the other mother is, because she goes up to her room and tries to sleep thinking it's all one big bad dream, and she realizes she's still in the other world. So when she asks the other father where the other mother is at this point in the movie, he is basically saying things like mother knows best, mother knows this, mother knows that, and asks where the other YB Lovat is, because there is another YB Lovat in this world. And he says to her he had a long face and mother didn't like it. So basically, the other father, the whole time, even when Coraline first goes there and he sings a song about her and about the other mother in the other world, he is essentially, in a way, a good guy, and he's trying to actually warn Coraline to stay away from that world. And there toward the end, he's trying to warn her about how the other mother is. And the ghost children are three little children that have been trapped there that Coraline meets a little later toward the end of the film. And she comes to find out that the three children had their eyes taken and they decided to stay and allow the other mother to sew the buttons into their eyes because they gave in to her fake love, not knowing that it was fake. And then after the other mother sewed the buttons into the three ghost children's eyes, the reason they're ghosts is because the other mother literally, as it said, devoured them. So she kept them there, sewed buttons into their eyes, and then she ate them. So the idea of a whole other world existing that looks like Coraline's world, all the people in that world look like the people in her world. But the cat also, when he talks to her, he's also trying to inform Coraline that the other world is not as great and grand as it seems or she thinks. So she starts to listen to him, and then Coraline comes to find out in the film that the other mother has kidnapped her parents and trapped them. So now Coraline has to play a little game that the other mother loves to do. She loves playing games. So Coraline says, "Let's play a game, a finding things game." And Coraline is then sent out on a quest to find the eyes of the ghost children, which, don't be alarmed, they are not actual eyeballs. When I was younger, I first thought this myself. They are actually just what look like little, like, rubber bouncy balls with different symbols on them. Like one of them has a star on it, for example. So in the film, she does go through trials and tribulations, but she finds all three of the ghost eyes, the third one with the assistance of the cat, of course. And then when she gets into the house to inform the other mother that she has found the ghost eyes, she still has to find her parents in order to win and finish the game. So she gets inside, sees the other mother, and the other mother is now in a very dark form, essentially her true form at this point, where she is pale in the face, she has cracks and crevices on her face, on her hands. Her hands are long and wiry, and they look like claws, almost essentially like you'd see in a claw machine. And she has big, wiry metal legs and walks around like a giant spider, essentially. So, after Coraline claims that she knows where her parents are, the other mother opens the other door, and Coraline has now seen that her escape way is open. So, when the other mother looks behind the door and says that her parents aren't there, she says that she's going to stay there forever, holding up the needle and thread and buttons. So Coraline screams, "No, I'm not," and takes the cat out of pure reaction and throws him at the other mother, which he then proceeds to use his claws to tear out her button eyes. So the other mother slams into the wall, and everything around them disappears and turns into a big black web. As I said, she looked like a spider, so it makes sense that their surroundings are a web. So Coraline crawls away, and as she gets through the door, the other mother tries to chase after her, and she struggles to pull the door shut, but then the hands from the ghost eyes come out of her backpack and assist her with pulling the door closed. And the cat, obviously, is in the bag as well. And as Coraline crawls then through the hole, she gets to the other side, back to her world, and slams the door shut and locks it. But this does not mean it's necessarily over. Even though her parents do come back, they have no recollectional memory of what happened or where they went or the fact that they were trapped or kidnapped. So all seems well in the end, except for the fact that the cat tells her that she needs to officially get rid of the key that led to the other world in order for it to be officially over. So as Coraline is making her way to an old witching well to throw away the key, the other hand, the wiry hand of the other mother, followed her and attempted to go after her, and it ends up jumping at her and grabbing the key wrapped around her neck on a string and pulls her and starts pulling her toward the house. And you see at this point in the movie, the door to the other world is like banging open, or as if somebody's trying to get out essentially into the real world, until her friend YB Lovat shows up and snatches the hand away and throws it down the well, and he ends up falling as well because the hand makes him crash his bike. And as he's about to fall down the well from the other mother's hand, Coraline takes a rock and smashes the hand. Her and YB then wrap it up with the key, and then they throw it down the well. And though all may seem well at the end, when they have a garden party and they invite all of their neighbors over, they are left wondering, and fans mainly are left wondering, if the other world is truly gone. Because at the end of the film, if you pay close attention, you'll see the sign that says the Pink Palace, which is where Coraline and all her neighbors live. It's just one giant apartment building. You'll notice that the cat disappears behind the sign, and that's how the film ends. So there's a lot of rumor and speculation that did she ever escape the other world, and was the rest of the film just a dream, or did the other world ever actually go away? A little fun fact, I found out I couldn't remember exactly how long, so I looked this up. I looked up exactly how long it took to make this movie, and it says completing the film involved more than 500 people, and it took over the course of 4 years. Principal photography alone took 18 months. The Fantastic Garden was the most complex set created for the film, featuring hundreds of handcrafted flowers, most of which had their own individual light sources. So that's pretty cool, actually, that, the flowers, a lot of them had that. And the fact that it took 4 years to make this movie, I mean, it honestly makes sense. If you haven't seen the movie, when you go watch it, you're going to see why it took exactly 4 years to make, for sure. And now a lot of people have been talking about, are they going to make a Coraline 2? We know it's been since 2009, but will they ever make one? But the studio that makes these movies, such as Coraline, Nightmare Before Christmas, Paranorman, all those movies, they are very strict against sequels. They do not do sequels. They feel as if their films are better as standalone projects, which I can understand because, as we know, people, not everything needs a sequel. Some sequels are really good, don't get me wrong, but not every movie needs a sequel. It's best at times if we just leave the original alone as a standalone film and not continue the story. But anyway, Coraline is definitely one that is worth watching, I would say for sure. I have seen this movie, I don't know how many times, to be honest, since I was a kid. It is my one of my top favorite movies of all time. I actually have two different versions of the movie on DVD. I have the regular uh just DVD edition which just has the movie, and then I also have this specially made steelbook edition that I just got not that long ago. It's really cool. It has the movie and it has a separate disc in it with behind the scenes footage, behind the voices, art book artwork from the movie, and deleted scenes as well. So that's really cool. Um, yeah, like I said, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's so unique and so creepy and so like definitely different than a lot of other movies. It's definitely a very unique movie, like I said, and it's a movie of its own standing for sure. And what I mean by that is like there are not many movies out there like it at all. Like how a lot of people say the Avatar movies with the blue people, for example, those movies are very unique. They're their own thing. And that's essentially, in my opinion, what Coraline is. It's its own thing. Yes, there are other stop motion clay animated 3D films made by Henry Selick and Tim Burton, but I think out of all of those movies, Coraline is probably one of the most unique. And Tim Burton himself has said this, and he has also said that it is his darkest and most disturbing film out of all of the movies that he has made. But if you have not seen Coraline, I highly recommend that you watch it. And as I said in this episode, I've already given it away. Next week's episode will be about The Nightmare Before Christmas, but I'll still talk about it in the introduction. Thank you guys so much for listening. Again, like I said, there is a spoiler warning in this video, so if you have not seen Coraline, which if you haven't, where the heck have you been since 2009? Go watch the movie, then listen to this podcast. But if you have seen it, I really hope you enjoy this podcast. And thank you guys so much for listening. I really, really appreciate it. And if you have not read the book, it is obviously called Coraline. It's by Neil Gaiman, Gaiman. I highly recommend whether you go online and purchase the book and read it yourself. I know sometimes I like to read books physically myself. Or, as I said, if you go to my channel, The Hardy Bard, I will put the link in the description below to that channel. I just released an audiobook rendition of it if you'd rather listen to that, because I know some people like to listen to audiobooks. It is very different from the movie, so if you have seen the movie and you would then like to read the book and do a compare and contrast like I did, I highly recommend doing that. Or if you have not seen the movie, I would recommend watching the movie and then reading the book. Or if you want to do it the other way around, a lot of people do it that way too, that's fine. Whatever is your preference. But anyway, again, thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you so much for watching this podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. And with that, I leave you with this. This has been your host, Jake Truitt, saying, when the movie starts, please be quiet and courteous and silence your cell phones and enjoy the show. I'll see you guys next time, and thanks so much for listening. Take care.